Jesus told me to love my neighbors, and I do. I take garden veggies to the lady next door. I donate my gently used clothing to a clothing bank in my community. I take canned goods to the food pantry at the Episcopal Church. I donate to a reputable organization to help people in Gaza and Ukraine. I stand up for people when they're bullied by loud and louder insults. My neighbors include everyone because the God I know loves everyone. My trans neighbors, my migrant neighbors, my deaf neighbors, my unhoused neighbors, my lying neighbors, my neighbors who fly flags I don't like, my trustworthy neighbors, my neighbors who don't speak English. I was told to love all of my neighbors, and I do. I was taught to not hate anyone. Hate was a word I was not allowed to use because it flies in the face of the love your neighbor teaching. I was taught to build others up, not knock them down. I was taught to offer a hand up, not just a hand out. I learned phrases about treating the least of these is like loving Jesus and having a great relationship with the God of my understanding and what that God wants me to do. As I grew older, I realized the least of these includes everyone and anyone that I might have power over because of my size or because of my humanness, because of my ethnicity, my gender. It goes on and on. The entire animal kingdom and all plants and people who are weakened by infirmity, the elderly, children, babies, those who are suffering or who have their basic needs unmet. These are the least. As a child, I learned the maxim, it's better to give than to receive. It comes from the Bible, the book of Acts, chapter 20, verse 35. Of course, I disagreed as a child, but as an adult, I finally understood what it meant. The act of giving gets your head out of yourself and opens your heart to the needs and wants of other people. It's that warm feeling you get when the person opens a gift and a smile lights up their face. And so I give. I give my time, I give my talent, my love to people I know and to people I hardly know. Behaving in these ways has led me to become more compassionate, more in tune with the world's condition. And I believe living in this fashion helps me to be more like Jesus, a person whose legacy is unconditional loving kindness. Let's reread a passage from the New Testament of the Christian Bible, the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 34 through 40. Here's what it says. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungered and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. Now, sometimes we need a reminder that fear is the opposing force against love. Hatred is actually a way in which fear manifests itself. If you feel hatred toward anyone or anything, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of what will happen if this person is in charge? Am I afraid of being robbed? Am I afraid of a food shortage? Hate is one of the masks that fear wears. And finally, I've reached the guts of this God talk. I'm trying to be a good person and do what I was taught, but it's getting me in trouble. When I say I want to accept immigrants and help them, when I am welcoming the stranger, I'm called a socialist and woke. When I advocate for my trans friend and my non binary singers, I'm called a snowflake and a queer lover. To shut me down when I say Black Lives Matter, I'm told that all lives matter, as though I don't already understand. And when chaperoned a woman into health care for an abortion, I was called a baby killer and a liberal leftist. I can stand up to the name calling, but certainly I wish that we could exchange it for some civil discussion. I just don't understand how people can use the word Christian, which to me means following Jesus' example of how to live an unconditionally loving life. How they can do that and continue to employ hateful language and hurtful behavior. Which brings us to one of the toughest lessons of all from the Jesus that we love, forgiveness. Now, I understand that Jesus wasn't always calm and passive. You do remember the story of his turning over the tables in the tabernacle. It's found in all three of the synoptic gospels. Those are the first three books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And it's found near the start of the Gospel of John. In this story, merchants had set up tables inside the temple to sell animals. And Jesus knew that the merchants were not only using a holy place as a marketplace, but they were cheating. They were charging people much more than the animals were worth. And when he entered, he flipped over the tables to cause chaos for the merchants and told them that they were not welcome to turn the house of prayer into a house of thieves. So, no, Jesus wasn't always the calm and passive person that we see depicted in the stained glass windows of old churches, but he knew how to forgive, and we must too. As hard as it is to do, we must forgive the people who've lost their way. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Forgiveness can be defined as remembering the event, but having freed yourself from the emotion about the event. It's the ultimate let it go. It's so difficult to forgive people for being ignorant about a topic and to forgive them for acting in a way that hurts you or people you care about. And when all that unforgiveness builds up in us, it can manifest as chronic anger, which is a huge burden for any of us to carry around. Forgiveness is really about laying down that burden. It has little to do with the other person. Forgiving is one more way that I can send positive vibrations into the world and love my neighbor. I didn't say or even hint that it's easy. It isn't. But I will continue to take chicken soup to my unwell friend. I will continue to make regular deposits at clothing and food shelves. I will welcome the stranger without judgment because I know that the stranger is a child of God. I will speak out in protection of my friends who are bullied, whether by the press or by loud and scary people in our community. I will continue to use my voice for those who cannot speak. And I will continue to intentionally try to increase my level of forgiveness for others. And if all of this causes you to call me names because you feel my actions threaten you, so be it. Because I was taught to love my neighbors, and I do, even when it's really, really hard.